Warframe has gotten to a point where the game has become too easy for veterans and even people who recently started, and the damage meta has taken over to the point where survivability isn't really a major factor in your modding. Sure, you will have some semblance of survivability tools, but not a high necessity because, let's be honest, the game isn't designed for level cap or high level of gameplay, and most people do play on base steel path for about 1 to 2 hours maximum, some even less. And when you play conjunction survival, even fissures, that's where you're met with level 200 plus, and that's where most people get a shock of their first high level enemy unit. And then you have steel path circuit, where all regular players get a taste of absolute power and dominating high level enemies. But what if I provided you a build that does a lot of damage and has basic modding and Warframe synergy that doesn't use adaptation, rolling guard, Vazarin, or even overguard? Just shoot gun and wipe the floor with enemies. Introducing Shield Regen builds.
Hold on, I'm cooking.
Now, I see a lot of confused people. People are already thinking about Shield Gate builds, where you run low shield pools and use ability spam to refresh your shields so you get a newer instance of a shield gate. No, this is different. But first, let me help you understand what is actually happening. And for you to understand, you have to know the difference between Shield Gate and Shield Regen. First of all, any Warframe that has shields can simply Shield Gate. It's not a mod or an arcane, it's a passive mechanic that is available on any Warframe that has shields. Shield Gate is a process of stopping damage bleeding into your health by placing a window of brief damage negation when your shields do break. This isn't pure invulnerability, you're still vulnerable to toxin damage, as that ignores shields altogether. To keep it simple, your shields break, then you're unkillable for a brief moment, and the damage negation time frame is dictated by the amount of shields you had before they broke. And of course, the shield amount for a max shield gate duration is capped. And as your shields are recharging, you still have another instance of a shield gate when they do break, but it is lower since you don't have a lot of shields. But why am I explaining this? 1, there are people who don't know this, and 2, to give you a baseline of what's to come so you don't get confused. Now, what people used to refresh this instant of a shield gate was to mod lower shields, so using catalyzing shields, and use mods that would convert energy to shields. And of course, this makes their frames borderline unkillable, and the builds usually involved a lot more button pressing because it required you to be hyper aware, and if you're not fast enough, you will get killed. This type of modding didn't sit too well with people who wanted to take things slower and easier and still be able to play. And this is why frames like Revenant, Dante, and Wisp are so popular with the take it easy crowd. Now, what's the difference between Shield Gate builds and a Shield Regen build? For one, you're not modding for low amounts of shields. You want a larger shield pool, and you don't have to worry about rolling guard and whatnot. And you can take it a lot easier and focus more on dealing damage as you move across the tile sets. Now, this can work on any frame, but it's best to use it on frames that have a decent shield pool to begin with, and amplify it with primed redirection. This is going to give you a nice bump to your shields. Now, for those who don't know, when your shields break or take damage, they do have a timer before they can start regenerating. And there's a speed at which they regenerate. Frames like Gus that have a passive that increases that regen and reduce the delay. However, we can add that to any frame with these two mods: Fast Deflection and Vigilante Vigor. Funny enough, you would never see any regular player use these two mods because they don't look good and do not contribute to big damage and don't make number on modding screen go green. Not only that, you have your Sentinel with mods like Guardian and Shield Charger. Guardian instantly replenishes your shields when they break with a 30-second cooldown, but that 30 seconds is reduced thanks to Manifold Bond. And then you have Shield Charger. The bonuses on Shield Charger are both additive to the redirection shield bonus increase and the recharge rate on Fast Deflection and Vigilante Vigor. That means I'll have 210% shield recharge rate. However, 150% 100% of the time, as the shield charger does go on a cooldown, and no info if it's affected by Manifold Bond. And I'm utilizing these Sentinel mods on a Worm Prime. This Sentinel has an augment called Negate, where it prevents a singular status effect from proccing on you with a 5-second internal cooldown, and not affected by Manifold Bond. I am using a frame that also aids me with status effect prevention. Saryn with her second ability, Molt. When cast, it clears up all active negative status effects and grants you a speed multiplier while also drawing away enemy fire. Pretty good. Now that I'm done with the survivability portion on how certain mods and synergies are keeping you alive, let's go to the fun part, the damage section.
That's what I'm talking about. This is all I need.
Let's go over the basic fundamentals of damage. You want to have your base damage, crits, elements, debuffs, and external damage modifiers. And what better frame to do that on than a Saryn? I know I have a problem. This Saryn loadout is a weapon platform Saryn, meaning you're not using abilities to deal damage, but having Saryn synergize with the weapon to enhance it while also increasing its damage output. Now the gear is catered to the specific setup, and the combo is so simple that it doesn't require incarnate weapons to do so, but it does require you to have these items to form this specific loadout, so then the whole thing can work. Now, why Saryn? I can easily get Corrosive and Toxin on any weapon without modding those elements on my weapons. Venom Dose, Saryn's first ability augment, adds Corrosive to all her weapons. This is literally a combined elemental mod on your weapon, like the combined radiation mods, meaning it is considered a separate entity to your modded elements. So anything that combines into Corrosive will not add to Venom Dose. That means I can have both Venom Dose and an electric elemental damage mod, meaning I can proc both electric and the corrosive status effects together. And Toxic Lash, Saryn's third, is an elemental infusion, not like Venom Dose. This is a separate instance of elemental damage that scales from strength, your weapons, weapon mods, weapon modifiers, elemental mods, and faction multipliers. And unlike Venom Dose, it is a guaranteed proc. So applying Venom Dose to my weapon directly boosts Toxic Lash's damage to then boost the damage on my weapon. Now, here is the weird part that does confuse people. Even though Toxic Lash is an ability that gives you elemental damage, its damage is still considered weapon damage, as it coats your weapons with the toxin elemental damage and relies on your weapon to deal the damage on its own. And of course, to multiply the damage I'm dealing even further, I will be using Roar.
That's a lot of damage.
This is a universal damage multiplier that is considered faction damage, meaning you don't have to add faction mods to your weapon if you're using this, giving you a free mod slot. Now that all the yapping is done, let us see how the builds are put together. I will start off with my Archon Shards and Arcanes, and this is the part where we're able to see who didn't pay attention in the comment section. I have 4 purple shards. 2 of them add the electric element on my primary weapon, and 2 of them are a weaker version of Equilibrium. This is for a reason you will understand when I get to the Warframe build itself. And finally, a red shard to give me more strength, cause more damage. Now, for those thinking, why not green shards on Saryn? Because I'm doing way too much damage that you will not even notice your corrosive procs taking, and enemies won't even live to even see 4 procs. And the only time where you'll need the green shard to increase your corrosive procs if you're level capping. Now that you understand that, let's get on to the build. Okay, here we are in the build section of the video. Saryn is going to be the Warframe, and Acceltra Prime is going to be the main DPS weapon. The secondary doesn't matter, however the melee is going to be here just for utility. And onto the modding section. Now, the polarities here all matter, and they're very important. In the aura slot, I do have an aura forma. That means I can fit any sort of aura I want, regardless of the polarity. Of course, starting off with the arcanes, I do have Arcane Avenger. As it states, when I take damage, I have a 21% chance to gain 45% critical chance for 12 seconds. Now, this crit chance is a flat increase, so then it is applied to your weapons after your built-up calculated crit. So if you have a look at my Acceltra, it does say I have 102% crit chance. Now add 45% to that 102% crit chance. That's pretty much it. Now this says when I take damage. However, we can trigger this arcane without even taking damage, and that's by using a specific aura mod. And in this particular case, I'll be using Combat Discipline. Now, I'll not be using a maxed Combat Discipline because that takes up 10 health on kill, and we're going to be killing a lot, but I'll be using a rank 1, so that's lose 2 health. So when you lose 2 health, this is considered damage taken to your health. So when you take damage, it triggers this arcane to give us that 45% crit chance. Simple as that. In the X-list, I'll be using Prime Surefooted. This gives me 100% chance to resist knockdowns and staggers. If you do not have this, you have other options like Pain Threshold. This gives you that faster stagger recovery, or Handspring. But in this case, I'll be using a radial weapon, so Pain Threshold is going to be a better choice than Handspring if you do not have Prime Surefooted. Now, for the Zeneric slot, I'll be placing in my augment, Venom Dose. Venom Dose allows you to hold cast your first ability, giving you that corrosive elemental damage on all your weapons. As you can see, I have 115% corrosive damage increase because I do have 115% strength. You may have noticed I have 4 D polarities. These D polarities are going to be very beneficial to us. Let's start off with a very important D polarity, Narrow-Minded. This is a weapon platform build, so the only thing that's going to matter is the bonus damage that we're going to be giving our weapons. And adding on to that duration, I'll be going with Primed Continuity. That is 254% duration. That means our Roar will last 76 seconds, Toxic Lash 114 seconds, and finally, Spores with Venom Dose will last 101 seconds. That's a massive boost to our duration. And with the final D slots over here, I'll be putting Primed Redirection. This gives me 180% shield capacity, which takes my base of 370 all the way up to 1036. That's pretty huge. Following up with Fast Deflection for that 90% shield recharge and that negative 45% shield recharge delay. Now, adding on to this, I'll be using Vigilante Vigor. And because these two do the same thing, they're going to be additive to each other. And stacking both of these will be so beneficial to our shield regen. Now, the final 2 slots are here to add strength. Duration is important, so I don't want to be using Transient Fortitude to lower that duration. And because this is a weapon platform build with high duration, efficiency does not matter. And that's why I'm going with Blind Rage. That's 99% strength increase to all of my abilities. However, to buff my 4th ability even further, I will be using Precision Intensify. This is a 90% strength increase to my 4th ability alone. So both of these will add on to that Roar. So then that will boost the damage on my weapon to then boost the damage on Toxic Lash. For the final strength increase is going to be a conditional strength increase with Molt Augmented. This grants me 60% strength after I gain 250 kills. For even more strength, I will be using Maturai. Maturai is an amazing focus school because, for one, it grants me 40% strength when I perform 2 Void Slings, and that's with Sling Strength. So 2 Void Slings, I get 40% strength, which snapshots to all of my abilities that I will cast. And of course, when I transference back into my Warframe, I gain 50% casting speed. So let's see how this is actually performed. We have a bunch of enemies right here that I'll be spawning in. I'll perform 2 Void Slings, 1, 2, and I get that buff right there, you see? Increase strength. And I can use that to snapshot into my 4th skill, my 3rd, and my 1st. I'll just shoot the enemies. And pay attention to the top right corner. You'll see Arcane Avenger triggering after a couple of kills. You see? Arcane Avenger. Now we get that bonus crit chance. And you're going to be seeing reds and oranges. Just like that. That's why you don't have to worry about corrosive stacks, because everything is just going to be dying. Now, moving on to my main weapon, the Acceltra Prime. This weapon isn't that great unless you use so many buffs to make it powerful. And that's easily done thanks to Saryn. Now, Acceltra's mechanic is very simple. You shoot out these bolts that detonate on contact, and they do have a decent radial explosion when they make contact. So now without any buffs, you can see I'm dealing AoE damage. So let's see how I put the build together. Starting off with the Arcane Primary Blight. On Toxin status effect, you gain 3.6% critical damage and 1.8% multi-shot for 12 seconds. And this stacks up to 40 times. So that's 144% critical damage and 72% multi-shot. For my base damage, I'm using Serration. So that's 165% base damage altogether. It will be weaker than running Dexterity or Merciless. However, this setup already is doing way more damage than that because we have so many buffs coming from Saryn. Galvanized Chamber for the multi-shots. So this mod with the Arcane increases how many pellets I shoot out. Crit chance, taking it over 100%. So this is guaranteeing every shot to crit. And Vital Sense for even more critical damage, multiplying the damage when I do crit. Prime Firestorm, this increases the radial explosion. Notice it's at 7.2 meters. Now each pellet will provide a radial explosion, and when we shoot out multiple pellets at a time, it's creating a larger area of effect with those explosions. Now for my modded element, I do have Viral, and this is coming from these two mods, increasing my status chance alongside having the Viral Elemental damage. And then finally, Primed Warp Magazine to increase my magazine capacity, so I have more bullets to shoot out. Now, for those wondering, where is electricity coming from? If you paid attention, you would know. It's from the Archon Shards. The 2 Archon Shards giving me electric elemental damage. So right now I'm dealing corrosive with Venom Dose, viral from the modded element on the weapon, and electric from the Archon Shards, and finally toxic from Toxic Lash. Another demonstration, you'll see. One shot, we have electric, corrosive, and toxin right there with a little bit of viral. Of course, this is one shot. I'm not shooting and holding down the trigger. This is just one single tap of the button. You can see we're dealing a lot of damage already. For those who are not convinced, let's take it up a notch with Xmas units. Yeah, those are Xmas units. They're already dead. That's how strong this setup is. Now, finally, on to the WARFRAME build. All right, first things first, the order of the mods do matter. And that's why I have Guardian here as my first mod. And this will trigger when my shields break, and I'm easily able to reduce the cooldown from 30 seconds all the way down to being instant thanks to Manifold Bond. Pay attention, killing enemies with 3 or more unique status effects reduces companion ability cooldowns by 3 seconds. And that's easily done with Saryn and all those elemental procs coming from her weapon. Now, Negate is not affected by Manifold Bond. It is a 5-second cooldown, and this prevents status effects applying onto you. And then thirdly, I do have Shield Charger. Increases max shields. This is pretty much like Redirection and Fast Deflection and Vigilante Vigor. And over here, I have Mediray. Sentinel will occasionally heal its owner, restoring 12% health over time. You did see I do have Combat Discipline on my build, and this is where the Archon Shards and the Sentinel make sense. As you can see, these 2 Archon Shards here will convert energy to health and health into energy. Now, if I take damage, thanks to Combat Discipline, these 2 will heal me alongside some passive heals with Mediray. So this is why I don't have to worry about dying and I don't have to worry about energy. So let's say I kill enemies right now. I've lost my health. I'm passively healing. And I picked up some energy orbs or health orbs, and I get some health and energy back. So I don't have to worry about dying from killing enemies, and I don't have to worry about running out of energy. Take a look at when they damage me. Right there, prevented a status effect. I can use my 2 to cleanse the status effect. Okay, I want them to break my shields. You'll see my shield regeneration. Right there, shields are back. Instantly refreshed. And how it's constantly regenerating. This is a shield regeneration build. And it's immediately replenished. Thanks to Guardian. Now, if I keep on killing enemies, I reduce the cooldown with Manifold Bond. So having a lot of enemies is also beneficial to the build. And that showcase right there was just me jumping around, fooling around without actually killing enemies properly. Of course, if you were to enter a mission properly, you'll be killing everything left and right. Your shields won't even be taking damage. One single hit, you'll get constant regeneration. So this is a simple build for everyday use, and you don't have to worry too much. And all you have to do is pay attention to your buffs and replenish them. Anyway, folks, that has been it for me. I do hope you enjoyed and learned something from this video. If you did, please feel free to leave a like, share, and
Subscribe.
for more Warframe, First Descendant, and other game content, please do refer to the description. Thanks for watching, and as always, a peace. Bye-bye now.